My name is Nicholas Wenner, and I am presenting FiberShed's Fiber Visions project. For this project, we created graphics to visualize regenerative annual cycles for three fibers in our region, dogbane, wool, and cotton, and grounded those visions with textiles made locally from those fibers. In this session, we're focusing on wool, and I will present the graphics, which will also be shared online, and the textile samples, and we will hear from a local wool producer about what's happening on the ground at this point in the cycle in October, November 2020. Here are the base graphics for the wool cycle, and you can see that time flows from left to right, and we've broken it into a wet season and a dry season. And when we interviewed ranchers for the project, they often said something like, well, the year really starts in October with the rains. And that really does make sense for our region in Northern California. We have a wet season from October to April roughly, and a dry season from May to September. And we are presenting a cycle that's currently practiced by contract raisers in our region, like Chaos Sheep Outfit, who we'll hear from soon. And we'll zoom into these, but in general, in the wet season, the sheep are grazing on alfalfa and in vineyards. And in the dry season, they're grazing for fire fuel load reduction on public and private lands. So zooming in on the wet season, moving from left to right, the ewes first graze in a perennial alfalfa field and give birth to lambs. Together, they then move to the vineyards, where they are sheared and graze the alleys. Then, when the grape leaves open, the lambs go to pasture and the ewes go to graze fire-prone landscapes in the next season, the dry season. You can also see in the background some buildings, and those are manufacturing facilities. And part of this vision is also sharing the manufacturing vision. And we do have manufacturing in place in our region, and we'll share a little more of that later. And here we're sharing what that would look like to expand to serve the scale of the needs in our entire region. And we're going to zoom in on particular aspects of this season. And when we post these online, we'll provide additional resources about all of these focus areas. And for now, we will just give an overview. So in the first one, a layer of compost is applied to rangelands, and that provides readily available nutrients and inoculates the soil with beneficial microbes. And you can read a lot more about that from projects like the Marin Carbon Project. Integrating sheep and cover crops into vineyards and other cropping systems can cost-effectively increase carbon sequestration, nutrient storage, and biological activity in the soil, as well as reduce needs for synthetic inputs. And you can read a lot more about that through Kelsey Brewer's work at UC Davis. Nutrients from the atmosphere, like carbon and nitrogen, enter the plants and then cycle through the biosphere, ultimately forming the fibers we wear and the food we eat. And in these graphics, we're talking about the agroecological cycles, and we're also talking about the manufacturing systems that go into taking those fibers from the land and turning them into textiles. And the first step for wool is shearing. So seasonal shearing, which is critical to the health of the sheep, is part of the reciprocal relationship that is developed between sheep and those who tend them. The next step is scouring. About half of the weight of raw wool is made up of lanolin, vegetable matter, and soil that is washed away during the scouring process. Once removed, the lanolin is used for cosmetics and other applications, and the rest can be used as an agricultural amendment. We also show dyeing and finishing in this scene, and this could happen at multiple stages throughout the process. But loose fibers, yarns, fabrics, and garments are dyed using natural materials, and the wastewater is treated and applied to the fields. So here's everything that I just told you in one single graphic. And again, all these will be available and more resources about each of them will be provided online. And now focusing in on the dry season. From left to right, as the grasses die back and dry, the ewes graze across the landscape to reduce fire fuel load. And the ewes breed in May, and the lambs are harvested by the middle of the season. When the rains come again, the ewes return to pasture for lambing, and the cycle starts again. And we'll focus in again on some specific aspects. So flocks of sheep can be used to reduce the fire fuel load in residential areas where managed grazing maintains soil health as well as defensible space. And electric fencing contains the livestock, and guardian dogs deter predators, protecting them as well as the livestock from harm. And they can be used to manage fires in other areas as well. And so grazing can lower the risk of destructive fire and cost effectively protects the plants, soil, carbon, and nutrients stored within them. And this is in contrast to a lot of the fires we've seen this year, where without grazing or other management, tall, dry plants can spread fire into the trees, creating hot, uncontrolled wildfires and emitting large amounts of carbon and other nutrients into the atmosphere. So in this dry season, if we focus in on the rumen, part of the digestive system of the sheep, while the rest of the ecosystem is totally dry and dormant, the sheep's rumens house highly active microbes that digest plant materials quickly and cycle the nutrients, making them immediately available again to the soil and to the plants in the next season when the rains come. On the manufacturing side, here we show a spinning mill powered by renewable energy where workers card, draft, and spin scoured wool into fine yarn. And we also show a knitting and weaving facility where workers knit or weave yarn into fabric. And again, these mills would be powered by renewable energy with solar panels, with wind. And here is everything I just shared in a single graphic. And again, we'll share all this online with details about each of these subject areas. So that was the annual cycle for wool in our region. In the wet season, grazing on alfalfa and then vineyards. In the dry season, grazing for fire fuel load reduction. And again, this cycle is based on current practices from contract grazers like Chaos Sheep Outfit. And we're going to hear from Jamie from Chaos right now about what's happening on the ground for them this year at the beginning of the wet season.
Well, our ewes are grazing BLM land in like August, September, and then the fires kind of pushed us. We kind of had to evacuate those grazing grounds early, and we one of the organic farmers we work with was able to find some fields by his house that were rice fields that didn't get planted, so we were able to take the ewes there for a little bit, and then some corn. After they harvest their corn, we were able to go in and graze some of the crop residue there. And then they just went up to MacArthur area to hay fields and alfalfa fields, and that's helpful to the farmer because it allows them to cut back on the pesticide and herbicide spray, but we have to be off those fields once it starts raining, because then they start worrying about the too much compaction. We're able to start lambing up there, and right now it's just kind of trickling. Couple ewes are lambing a day, but by the 15th it'll start picking up of October, and then into first couple weeks of November we'll be lambing like 150 ewes a day. It'll be pretty fast. Well, yeah, we're lambing, and so that's always the dogs. We have 26 like the livestock protection guardian dogs, and that's a full-time job in and of itself, because you're constantly, bringing on new puppies, and then trying to train them. And with this type of grazing, this constant kind of movement and on different lands, the different land bases, working with different people, they have to be really good dogs. I mean, they have to do their job, they have to stay with the sheep, and they have to be friendly. But last year, actually, it was very weird. Like, I felt like every time I pulled up to a vineyard, there was a coyote standing in the field, and we were short dogs because we had 20 groups of sheep, and we only had about, we had 19 groups of sheep. We only had 21, 22 dogs, and like 3 or 4 of them were pups. So we didn't have enough dogs. The amount of respect and love we have for them is huge, because they're not just a friend or, a dog that comes up and, gives you a little side nudge or something in the field. With the sheep, you've been through so much with them. You've been through the seasons, you go through the whole year, and then the border collies are definitely an asset, and friend, constant. It's a huge relationship. I would really like to see the state, look at different places that haven't burned, that are going to burn, and maybe you put in a 100-acre fire break of just grazing, or prescribed burning, or whatever it is. But we need to start strategically planning fire breaks, so you don't have a 1,000,000-acre fire, because it's just not going to work to have these kind of fires anymore. It's just, we can't, like, our population is large, and I'd like to see the utilization of all these land management tools, of the good aspects, and to put it into, a strategic plan for the state to use. That makes sense to me.
And here you can see wool that Jamie helped produce and a textile made from it. And we originally intended to share these samples in person at the symposium, but since we're virtual this year, we have photos to share. And the wool was grown by Chaos Sheep Outfit in Northern California. And it was scoured, carded, and spun by Matt and Sarah Gilbert at Mendocino Wool and Fiber Inc. in Ukiah. And then woven by Sandy Fisher in Chico, California. And so here we have a textile that was grown, spun, and woven, completely made within our bioregion, using the regenerative cycles that we've been exploring in this project. We also created some dyed samples, and Sandy Fisher did the dyeing. You can see walnut in the lower skein and madder in the upper, and those went into the textile on the left. And so we've shared one annual cycle for wool for our region in Northern California, and how producing food and fiber can support farmers and ranchers, can support soil health and carbon sequestration, reduce fire fuel load, and support local businesses and manufacturers. And we've shown how that looks on the ground already, with local wool and local manufacturers making textile samples. And we hope that sharing this vision will help all of this expand to help serve the needs of our region and provide regenerative fibers like wool at the scale that we need them. Thank you for your time, and thank you Jamie and Robert Irwin, Kelsey Brewer, Jessica Chiartas, Matt and Sarah Gilbert, Sandy Fisher, Paige Green, Amanda Cohen, and Jess Daniels.